Welcome to my budget deck channel where I try to make decks as cheap and playable as possible. So if this is something you'd be interested in, then why not subscribe? Today I'm finally back with a deck that is somewhat new. For me it is new because I haven't been able to play for a few days or weeks now at this point, but I'm back with content and I've been crafting up something. I've been cooking up this deck list. It's obviously not perfect because there's so many different ways of playing this deck, and there will be a lot more deck profiles of Libromancers in here. So if you actually get the Libromancer core, you can expect to well, have some more content with this, some more variations of this, because this supports loads of other ritual decks and even non-ritual decks. There's something crazy that you can be doing. The only problem with this is making a core with this is quite expensive because there's quite a lot of stuff that you need, and with stuff I mean the field spell. But let's discuss the Libromancer ratios first, because they are the most important ones, and we'll get to all of the other cards later on, because here you can mix and match with whatever you have, because there's lots of other cards that search the cards and so on and so on, so you can do quite a lot of stuff. I would say run at least 2 Geek Boy, but you already see you can run 3 Geek Boy, you can run Emergency Teleport, because this card basically just special summons Geek Boy, and Geek Boy only gets its effect when you actually special summon the card. So sometimes, not all the time, Emergency Teleport can actually be better than having Geek Boy in your hand, because if you have Geek Boy in your hand, you need a ritual monster in your hand, which not always will be the case. So with Emergency Teleport you kind of circumvent this, but then you kind of have to get rid of Geek Boy on board, which shouldn't be too bad because nothing really locks you. So you technically could still link it off if that ever becomes a problem. And Geek Boy searches one very important card, and that is the field spell that sadly we kind of have to be running at 3. You could also like substitute, if you only drew 2 of them, you run 1 terraforming and you're still fine. Like, it's not about running 3 as in the ratios, but as you want to see this card as much as possible, because it's not only another search, so it replaces itself, but it is your ritual spell basically, and a continuous one at that. You can ritual summon multiple times per turn, which is very, very, very important. And other than that, you would have to actually run the Libromancer ritual spell, which technically you can if you want to run a bit of a cheaper variant. You could cut down on the field spells and stuff, put this card in, and hope you find a good way in conjunction with the incantations and with stuff like Manju to play a version that still gets stuff done without having to rely on the field spell. But the field spell obviously does so much. So this is when we start talking about the other important Libromancer, which is Fire. So here again, same thing. If you only have like 1 or 2 Geek Boy, only run 1 or 2 Geek Boy, maybe like play 1 Emergency Teleport. But if you only have 1, then Teleport becomes kind of well, a bit iffy. But if you have like multiple Fire, then technically you can substitute this, because Fire, if it special summons, you can add 1 Libromancer from your deck to hand. Then you add Geek Boy, then you special summon Geek Boy with the same effect as Fire. Then this card searches the field spell, and so on. So you have like a circle of things that can happen. So let's say you pulled 3 Fire but only like 1 or 2 field spell, then you can substitute it that way. Play like more of this card, play less of this card, and so on and so on. You want to at least play 2 field spell, I feel, though. Technically you get away with 1, but then some other substitution cards might be ending up useless. But in the end, it's a ritual deck, so if it's a monster, you can always tribute it for ritual summon, and that's about that. So you can already see with the ratios of certain cards, you are a bit more flexible. Let's jump into the ritual monsters then, because there's also something that you obviously usually don't play as Firestarter. And Firestarter is a card that in conjunction with this card, and in conjunction with this card, it makes the OTK card less vulnerable, which, if you play Go Second, sometimes that matters. Like, your opponent can't clear this card then, but they could clear it till that point, and it doesn't really matter. This card is just basically you can keep a loop up where you can constantly gain stuff, and this card is a ritual monster as well, and it's a Libromancer as well. So having this card, having access to this card, getting it out of the deck, maybe putting it back into the deck then with Agent if you recycle your trap cards and stuff, running 1 or 2 isn't too bad, because like I said, these cards, you have to, if you summon them from your hand, like you have to special summon them. And to special summon them, you have to reveal a ritual monster. You can technically like trade out one of this and then run like Manju and stuff at more. But the problem is, since we run Planet Pathfinder, which is already your normal summon, you'd rather normal summon this card than this card. And yeah, a lot of the time it comes down to how do you want to do it, how do you not want to do it. But this would be like one card to cut. You could cut down as many of them as you like, as long as you don't feel like you don't have enough ritual monsters in your hand, because obviously you need some for your incantations as well, which I'll be talking about in a second. So I felt like 2 of them were fine. Obviously substitute them with 1 or 2 more Doombrokers, maybe even a second Fireburst, but usually you don't need that. So yeah, 1 would be a Doombroker if you have 2 Doombroker as well. You can already see there's lots of stuff to change once you have like certain cards, depending on what you got from the packs. Another substitution is Signet Mining if you already have a Cybers deck, and this is a card that you'd be interested in, or that you already have. Then this card is kind of worth crafting for other Cybers decks, and if you already have it, this card can search Libromancer Fire. So like this is another way of getting to your field spell, and this is another way of starting the combos off. So you can see, depending on which card you have, you don't have to stick to the ratios that I've given you. You can actually mix and match a bit so it still works. And that's very important for like a budget deck. Usually that doesn't matter for normal decks, but for budget variant, this is very important, because even if you like discard stuff with this and whatever, it still gets your combo going, and your combo is what matters. Nothing else matters at this point. That sounds very, very sad, but that is how this deck is played. And let's talk more about the actual cards now, because obviously you've seen Doombroker. This deck will be more Doombroker controlled. You kind of want to start pass your turn by having 2 disruptions, one of the ones that you drew and one of the ones that you search by Doombroker. If your opponent disrupts you, Called by the Grave can be quite a nice card, because this deck basically dies to Ash Blossom. It is what it is, but there's circumvention tools that you can do, but not all that easy. And then you try to keep your opponent on as little resources as possible, that they cannot get over Doombroker. Even with your Mystigirl targeting protection, that can be very, very helpful. So you want to get this card back to your next turn, or have some way of recycling it, Penciplume for example, Agent for example, and then search again and keep your opponent off of it while you keep attacking them directly, or possibly even attacking them with stuff like Fireburst and finishing the game. And you have like a resource loop. That's why I run triple Agent. Agent is somewhat nice, not really going first, because you can use it, but the stuff that you recycle won't be that helpful. Technically, it can be better to keep this card in hand, search it for the next turn even, or search it during the next turn, depending on what hand you have. And with these cards, you have to bounce one of your ritual monsters back to hand. Sometimes you do want it to be Doombroker, but sometimes you don't want it to be Doombroker, so you have to watch out when it comes to that. But then you can always like set these cards back, and with this card you can special summon Fire if you went into Fire in your combo, and usually you kind of want to. Then you can get Fire back from your graveyard, because this card special summons it from the graveyard. You search another Agent. Your Agent then recycles your trap card, and that's the circle that keeps on giving, and you keep on having one intervention. Even though you just run one, you can use it at least like 2 or 3 times during the duel. And then if you attack with 2500 every single time, then yeah, you might have won the duel after 4 turns. So that, or 3 turns I think. No, it's like 3 turns but 500 short, which is a bit annoying, but sometimes you have other ways of dealing damage. So that's the main kind of playstyle that you have. You want to like draw one of your disruptions plus search from a Doombroker, and then keep that resource loop going while your opponent can't really do much. For other plays, if we don't happen to have the field spell, if we need some other kind of recursion tools, obviously in a grindy kind of game, you want to have cards that get you stuff back. That's when the Impcantation engine comes in. This card can recycle you one of your ritual monsters from the graveyard. Since you only run one Doombroker, this card can be very essential. Talismandra searches your ritual monster, which is very important, because if you run Chalislime, then you can have another way of getting into Doombroker if your chain of field spells and whatever gets disrupted. That can be quite nice. Plus Chalislime actually adds a bit of well, it adds a ritual monster to your hand, so you already have that for your combos, combo starters with the Libromancer main deck monsters, because they are quite nice. They have to be special summon though by showing a ritual monster, and if you do this, this is quite neat, and you can special summon them out. Technically, you also do run one Candoll, because sometimes, just sometimes, Inception becomes key. If, for example, you have a way of getting into Doombroker and have another disruption, but you did not get into the field spell, then technically you can make it so with Chalislime and whatnot that you get into Doombroker, have the disruption, have this, and then hope you draw into the field spell eventually, that stuff happens, and you can keep looping your resources like that. But you hope that you don't have to use it, but this is why the incantations are in here. We run one Mystigirl because this card can, in the Grind game, it's not too bad, and going second, this card is actually not too bad, because not only does it negate an effect of your opponent's monster when it's summoned, but also puts the attack to 0, which is quite nice for stuff like Fireburst, and going for OTKs as well. Technically, this is a disruption in combination with Magigirl, but it only works for cards that have an effect like Agent that doesn't trigger on summon, because then you can activate this card when this card is summoned as a reaction to it, and then negate the effect before the opponent can activate it. Otherwise, if it's one of these like that happen after something and start a chain, then if you chain Magigirl, then this card's effect will be activated the chain after, and won't actually work. So this is a bit annoying, but you could play this with Ritual Buster, I'm pretty sure. I think it should work like the Monarch Ether combo. So technically this is a card to consider if you want to lock your opponent out of spell or trap cards. Don't think it's really necessary to play, but it could be fun. Another card to consider is Preparation of Rites. This card, not so much for its second effect, it would be just like a more, well, versatile way to play the deck. I didn't have it, so I didn't include it, but technically you could play like 2 Impcantation or 1 and run 2 of this, because with this you can search Doombroker, with it you can search Fireburst, and you can search Chalislime. So if you have this, this makes the whole deck a bit more versatile. The problem is if it gets ashed, and this can happen, then you don't have a ritual monster in your hand. If you play it like triple Chalislime, even if the effect gets negated and whatnot, you could still beforehand or after that use your other Libromancer cards. So that's something to at least keep in mind. Already talked about Pathfinder, is very good. Ash Blossom is obviously a good card, you get 1 for free, same for Impermanence. This is good for disruptions. We play Forbidden Chalice, good going second, good going first, and it's a budget card. 1 Punishment, because extra deck doesn't really matter. I know you can play a variant where it matters. If you run Diviner and you can use Ben 10, then you can go into crazy stuff like Baron, go pop Scythe, summon it back, knock your opponent out of the extra deck. You can send Herald, you can send Intis. There's so many things you can be doing with this deck if you want to spend a lot more on it. But so far I decided to go for more of a main deck focused kind of variant, so we don't run any of this, so extra deck doesn't really matter. So works with Prosperity, technically works with Extravagance if you want to, works with Punishment. Punishment gives you an out through spell traps as well. If your opponent summons a low attack monster, you can send Fossil Machine. If not, send Dragon Master Knight. If you have access to it, send Intis or technically Herald, but 600 attack isn't that great. Baguska is nice for the extra deck. Technically Cicada King can be nice for the extra deck, but doesn't really matter. And the whole incantation stops you from going too much into the extra deck either, so your extra deck is really not all that important. We run these traps at 1, this trap at 1, and we play 1 Prevented, mainly just because of the reason that these are super rares. Like if you have multiple of these, you don't really have to run Prevented, even though it can be quite okay against some math mech decks, against some Despia stuff. It has its usages, it's okay. Salamangreat can be quite fun against, like, there's so many decks that rely on using 1 monster to go into some link, 1 for example, at Ignister if they can't really do much else. Then this can be crucial, but there's obviously lots of decks where this card like does absolutely nothing, and negating an effect, for example, does always something, unless you just normal summon a monster and attack, which isn't very good to begin with. So this card does a lot more, plus it special summons a monster from your graveyard and then triggers the effects of technically Geek Boy, but besides the field spell you don't really have anything to search, because the other spells are a bit garbage, I have to say, sadly a bit garbage. But yeah, that card is a lot better. This card is also still a tiny bit better, and we run 1 Drytron Meteor Shower, because there's a ritual deck. You always want to have a ritual monster on board. If during the opponent's turn and you start it, you don't have a ritual monster on board, then yeah, you basically will have lost anyway at this point probably, so it doesn't really matter. So this card actually budget-wise does some stuff against certain opponents' decks. What you can do is you can play this deck go second. It kind of does the same. Just cut that whole trap lineup, maybe cut some of the other cards that you feel like you don't need. You could technically cut Magigirl, for example, then and whatnots. You could cut Agent down to 2 or down to 1 and run some go second cards. They're more expensive, that's why I didn't want to do it, but Libromancers, the monster effects have both go second and go first skills. Like the deck isn't really catered to either. It's technically you can do both, but not well. Like none of the two you're actually doing well. You just do them. So if you want to play this deck going second, you very, very, very easily can. But I felt like going first was a tiny bit better. So that should have covered the main deck. Extra deck, not much happening actually. We run the targets for Dogmatika Punishment, some stuff that you could banish with Prosperity, some standard link stuff, rank 4s, rank 6s, rank 3s. If you have good cards, run them. Cowboy for game can sometimes happen if you have attacked thrice with a Doombroker and you can go into a rank 4, then that can matter, and you have possibilities to do it with Magigirl and Fire. So it's possible, but it's not super necessary or amazing. And that's already the deck profile. Hope you enjoyed the deck profile. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, but most importantly, I hope you have a good day.